for this.
I haven't been this excited about anything in a long time.
Well, tonight, I can finally definitively tell you that Silksong is 100% actually launching this year.
Seven years of mystery, silence, and rumor. Few games in modern memory have carried such weight in their absence as Hollow Knight Silksong. It's a story not just about a release date, but about the strange journey of a tiny team from Adelaide, Australia, who once sketched an idea on paper and transformed it into a cultural phenomenon. What began as a modest Kickstarter campaign in 2014 grew into Hollow Knight, a hand-drawn masterpiece that spread by word of mouth until it sold more than 15 million copies worldwide. And then, when fans expected a quick follow-up, the developers chose secrecy instead. They vanished from the spotlight, allowing myths, memes, and speculation to fill the void. Now, after years of waiting, Team Cherry has stepped forward with an announcement that shook the entire game industry. Hollow Knight Silksong will finally launch on September 4th, 2025, arriving day one on Xbox Game Pass. For fans who have been refreshing news feeds, dissecting trailers, and joking about when becoming if, this is more than just a release date. It's the conclusion to one of the most mysterious, drawn-out, and fascinating journeys in modern gaming. So let's set the stage. Hollow Knight isn't just another indie game. Again, it's a phenomenon selling over 15 million copies worldwide, an absolutely staggering number for a hand-drawn Metroidvania that began life as a small Kickstarter project. At its peak, Silksong became the single most wishlist game on Steam, surpassing every AAA giant on the platform. That level of attention doesn't come out of nowhere. It's the result of a studio that captured lightning once in the bottle and dared to stay silent for years as pressure and expectations grew. So why does this matter? Because Silksong isn't just about Hornet's journey through a new kingdom. It's about how 3 developers, 2 founders and a programmer, and 1 composer managed to redefine what patience, craftsmanship, and restraint look like in an industry obsessed with deadlines and hype cycles. It's about what it means when a sequel goes from being a simple DLC add-on to one of the most scrutinized games in development. And now, with its release tied to Xbox Game Pass, it's about how distribution models are changing the way that games find players. So in this breakdown, we're going to chase the secret path of Team Cherry, look back at Hollow Knight's unlikely rise, uncover how Silksong grew into its own epic, and explore the years of silence that nearly drove the community mad, and finally talk about why the Game Pass deal is bigger than you think. This is more than a timeline, it's a story about trust, ambition, and the shifting future of indie games. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next deep dive, but for now, let's rewind and meet the developers who started it all. Team Cherry is a studio unlike almost any other. At its heart are 2 lifelong friends from Adelaide, Australia, Ari Gibson and William Pellin. Ari had a background in animation and filmmaking, while William got his start in indie game jams. The 2 bonded over a love for challenging atmospheric games, and out of that friendship, Hollow Knight was born. But they weren't entirely alone. The small team was rounded out by Jack Vine, who provided programming and technical support, and that haunting music that defined Hollow Knight came from composer Christopher Larkin. In total, fewer than 5 people shaped the entire vision, tiny by industry standards, where even a modest indie studio might have dozens on payroll. From the beginning, their philosophy was crystal clear: quality over hype. They didn't want to pump out a flashy demo just to meet deadlines or chase a publishing deal. They wanted to make something that is enduring, an experience that felt alive, mysterious, and demanding. And that mindset pushed them to work slowly, deliberately, and with total control over the creative process. It also shaped how they presented themselves to the world. Unlike most developers, Team Cherry actually avoided marketing. They shared concept and art sparingly, skipped industry conferences, and avoided the constant drip feed of PR. Their updates were rare and purposeful. Sometimes months would pass without a word, and instead of seeing this as a flaw, fans read it as proof of authenticity. Team Cherry wasn't wasting time selling, they were building. That mystique became part of their identity. And in an industry defined by hype cycles, leaks, and loud announcements, Team Cherry thrived on silence. A tiny studio that few had heard of, suddenly carrying the aura of something bigger than themselves. Creators who refused to play by the usual rules. That decision would fuel their greatest success and later their longest controversy. But to understand the weight of that silence, we need to look back at how Hollow Knight, their very first full game, became a phenomenon. In late 2014, Team Cherry launched a Kickstarter asking for just 57,000 Australian dollars, barely enough to cover basic development costs. By the time the campaign ended, they had raised enough to prove that there was an audience that was curious about what these unknown developers were building. From that modest foundation, they created something extraordinary. Released in 2017, Hollow Knight was a fully hand-drawn Metroidvania set in the ruined kingdom of Hallownest. Every frame of animation was drawn by hand, every corner of the map designed with care, and every encounter meant to test patience and precision. The combat was tight and punishing, but always fair. The world was beautiful, unsettling, filled with decaying cities, forgotten caverns, and mysterious characters who spoke in riddles. It also looked like nothing else at the time. Word of mouth did the work that marketing never did. Players who stumbled onto Hollow Knight became evangelists. They shared speedruns, fan art, theories, and let's play. Entire communities sprang up around secrets, boss strategies, and lore breakdowns. Without PR campaigns or celebrity endorsements, Hollow Knight grew because players could not stop talking about it. And sales reflected that. Within a year, the game had passed the 1 million mark, then it crossed the 5 million mark, 10 million mark, and as of 2025, more than 15 million copies have been sold worldwide. For an indie game that started from such a humble Kickstarter, those numbers are staggering. Critical acclaim followed. Hollow Knight appeared on countless best of lists, winning awards for its art, design, and music. But beyond the trophies, it earned something far more valuable: cultural staying power. Even years after it was released, it remained one of the most talked about indies on the planet. That success gave Team Cherry two things they had never had before: financial security and complete freedom. They didn't have to answer to publishers. They didn't have to rush a sequel. They could just decide for themselves what came next. And what came next would surprise even their biggest fans. What eventually became Hollow Knight Silksong didn't actually start as a sequel at all. In 2019, Team Cherry revealed that they had originally planned to release Hornet, acrobatic rival and ally from the first game, as a playable character in a Hollow Knight DLC. But as they developed their mechanics, the project kept growing. Hornet's movement was faster, combat more fluid, and the world more vertical. The team quickly realized that this wasn't just an expansion, it was an entirely new game. That announcement hit like a shockwave. Fans expected a small add-on, but instead they were given the promise of a full sequel with a new protagonist, new world, and entirely new systems. Silksong would take place in Fairloom, a sprawling kingdom, and a very different personality than Hallownest. Where Hollow Knight was descending into darkness, Silksong promised a climb towards the light, a shift in tone, style, and philosophy. Hornet herself fundamentally changed how the game was played. She was taller, faster, and had greater range of ability compared to the Knight. Instead of just focusing on patience, slow precision, her style emphasized agility, combos, and aggressive mobility. She could leap higher, heal faster, chain attacks in a way that completely rewired the flow of combat. The world of Fairloom matched that energy. So Team Cherry teased this new quest system, hundreds of unique enemies, and a staggering number of bosses. Estimates suggest more than 50 bosses alone compared to the original's already massive lineup. They designed the game around Hornet's speed, which meant levels were taller, more layered, and filled with momentum-driven traversal. Where Hallownest felt more like a maze of ruins, Fairloom looked alive, vibrant, and dangerous in new ways. But with all of that ambition came weight. As months turned into years, the scope ballooned. Fans speculated about scope creep, perfectionism, and whether Team Cherry had bitten off more than 3 people could handle. The studio never rushed to reassure anyone. They stayed quiet, insisting only that the game wasn't finished until it lived up to their standards. What started as DLC had now transformed into one of the most anticipated games in the world. Yet as excitement grew, Team Cherry made the choice that frustrated fans but defined their identity. They went silent. After the initial 2019 reveal, fans expected regular updates, maybe a new trailer each year, maybe a development blog, maybe there was even going to be a release window. Instead, Team Cherry did the opposite. They went quiet for months at a time. Nothing surfaced, no press tours, no convention appearances, no playable demos, and the studio pulled back almost completely, leaving fans with nothing but a handful of trailers, few interviews, and scattered tidbits, and that silence became infamous. The community filled the void with endless speculation. Some believed Silksong had been secretly canceled. Others swore that it had been finished years ago and was just waiting for a marketing beat. The phrase "Win Silksong" became a meme across Reddit and Twitter. Every Nintendo Direct, every Xbox showcase, every indie spotlight sparked a wave of hope and then frustration when Silksong failed to appear. Fans coped with humor. Entire YouTube compilations emerged where people are screaming Silksong at the mention of any new indie game. Memes about Team Cherry's disappearance spread across Discord servers and subreddits. From the outside, the risk was obvious. In an industry where momentum often means survival, most developers can't afford to vanish. Long gaps between communication usually kill hype. Constant transparency is considered safer play. But Team Cherry wasn't following industry playbooks. They stayed locked in, quietly refining their vision, refusing to let outside pressures dictate their timelines. Years later, members of the team explained that they were deliberately protecting themselves from burnout. They described their process as just having fun making a game, rather than grinding under constant crunch. For them, silence wasn't neglect, it was about survival. The work continued, but without fanfare, without updates to feed the algorithm. This great silence tests the community's patience, but it also hardened the legend of Silksong. And when the news finally broke, it landed with a force that no marketing campaign could have ever manufactured. After years of silence, the reveal finally came, and it was bigger than anyone expected. During the Xbox partner preview and Gamescom coverage, Team Cherry confirmed that Hollow Knight Silksong would be released on September 4th, 2025, which was less than a month away, so fans went absolutely ballistic. But the real shock wasn't just the date, it was where the game would land. Day one on Xbox Game Pass. For the first time, millions of players who had never touched Hollow Knight would be able to play the sequel at no extra cost beyond their subscription. For an indie studio, this move was bold. Game Pass is often seen as a lifeline for small developers. It offers guaranteed revenue through Microsoft's backing, plus instant exposure to tens of millions of subscribers. For Team Cherry, it meant Silksong would no longer just be an indie cult hit, it would be a mainstream from the moment it launched. The decision raised some questions though. Would this hurt sales on Steam, where the game had sat at the very top of the wishlist charts for years? Would Switch and PlayStation players feel sidelined? Or would Game Pass simply expand the audience while still allowing hardcore fans to purchase the game outright? No one outside of Team Cherry knows the details of the deal, but the industry trend is clear. More indie studios are using subscription platforms as a launchpad. For Xbox, this was a strategic win, especially with all of Xbox's new collaborations, including the ROG Ally. This game could be huge. And Game Pass thrives on having recognizable titles that create buzz, and few indie games carry as much weight as Silksong. For Team Cherry, the benefits were obvious: financial security, guaranteed visibility, and the ability to launch without relying solely on the hope of sales spikes. After 7 years of silence, the announcement carried more power than any slow marketing cycle could have built. One date, one reveal, and a single partnership with Xbox that turned the game from a meme into the most significant launches of the year. Silksong's journey isn't just about one game, it highlights a bigger shift happening across the industry. For years, the story of gaming has been dominated by AAA studios with massive budgets, giant teams, relentless schedules, but here's a 3-person studio from Australia proving that patience, perfectionism, and staying small can create a cultural phenomenon that competes with the biggest franchises in the world. Hollow Knight's success shows what's possible when developers keep control of their vision. Silksong's long silence shows the risks and rewards of rejecting the hype cycle. And its Game Pass launch shows how distribution itself is changing, how subscription models can give indies the kind of spotlight that used to be reserved for blockbusters. For players, this means more access. A game like Silksong won't be hidden behind obscurity or word of mouth. It will be in front of tens of millions of people on launch day. For developers, it means the pressure of selling millions of copies on week one is replaced with a safety net, allowing them to focus on the craft. Team Cherry may be quiet, but their influence is loud. They've shown that a small team can inspire other indies to stay lean, stay true to their vision, and take risks without chasing every trend. Silksong's story is proof that the future of gaming won't just be built by massive studios with endless resources. It'll also be shaped by tiny groups of creators who bet everything on quality and patience. So that's the journey. 2 friends from Adelaide built Hollow Knight from a humble Kickstarter into a global phenomenon. They turned what was supposed to be simple DLC into Silksong, one of the most anticipated games of the decade. They went completely silent for years, letting the anticipation reach a fever pitch, and now after 7 years, they've shocked the industry again by bringing Silksong to all of us. The question now is yours. Will you be playing Silksong on Game Pass, or are you buying it day one to own it outright? And what has been your favorite memories from this whole journey? So make sure to leave them in the comments, and if you want more deep dives into games that shape culture, don't miss what's next. So make sure you're subscribed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.